what Gary is doing right now is sampling this area. The Navajo Reservation is this massive um, landscape within
Ernesto
the Four
Rodriguez
Corners.
is a senior environmental science major with an emphasis in biology. The Sonora, Mexico native is researching an ant species called Brachymermex, whose habitat stretches from southern Canada to Mexico. Rodriguez says there are many practical uses for studying this tiny arthropod. He says the information could be used for different programs, including ecological restoration.
I think this molecular work will fit into conservation because, first of all, we really don't have a clue whether this group is actually a single species or several different groups. So if you have an idea of whether if we have one whole species, it'll be probably the most widespread species in the United States, in North America.
Rodriguez's work is part of NAU's Colorado Plateau Biodiversity Center. By looking at the ant's molecular structure and its evolutionary history, the undergrad is working to fill a small part of a major gap in science, the lack of taxonomy, or the classification of organisms.
One of the biggest problems we have in conserving biodiversity is we don't even know how many species are out there. So arthropods, which make up 70% of all the species that we've identified on the planet, maybe 10% of them have actually been described. So, and probably the number one limiting thing in all of this is systematists. They are dying and not being replaced.
Brachymermex comes with its own set of challenges. It's one of the smallest ants, 0.5 millimeter or smaller, and covers a vast terrain. Rodriguez says ants are one of the most important groups of species. He says a good example is the desert, where ants cycle the soils.
If we didn't have ants, the soil will pretty much go sterile after a couple of years because they move nutrients under the environment. They aerate the soil by making holes for making their nests. They also provide nutrients by taking these pieces of light material down. So that by itself maintains the desert in a way. And they also spread a lot of seeds. So a lot of the trees in the desert will not survive without ants.
They can also gauge the health of an ecosystem. If ants move away from an area, it might be a sign of an underlying problem, which could be addressed and possibly remedied. Rodriguez became fascinated with ants while doing work at Harvard Forest a year and a half ago. He also did ant research in Yuma before transferring to Flagstaff, where he's working on this collaborative study of Brachymermex.
It's also important in that it really underscores for me the importance of that if you're motivated and you want to do something, you can do it. And so Ernesto is a great example of somebody who was brought into the NAU system through Yuma, made some key contacts at Western Arizona College and Harvard University, and because he took advantage of those contacts, he's linked people from Harvard and Yuma and NAU Flagstaff campus, as well as people from USGS and other regional universities.
The contacts this NAU senior made at Harvard may have opened the door to another project for this summer, the first scientific inventory of ants on the Navajo Reservation. In the meantime, Ernesto Rodriguez has Brachymermex from a handful of states and Mexico, and soon he'll have additional samples, which he'll use to extract DNA, compare DNA segments, and get closer to determining if the ants are part of the same group or different species. That information could be valuable to scientists and land managers.